Right, talking points, plenty of them. ITV signing a new deal for racing to be on terrestrial telly. Cornelius, good news for the sport, good news for them?
Four more years of ITV coverage. I thought Niall Sloan, who's the head of sport at ITV, was probably quite generous when he said this was vital for both parties. I don't know how important it is for ITV, but for racing as a whole, clearly it's completely vital that ITV are involved. I think we're talking about 117 days on terrestrial television, and that will take us through to 2030, and that's absolutely fantastic. I had an interview with Nick Mills, who's the CEO of RMG, who negotiated the deal. I was quite struck. I'm not sure I heard an interview with him or his equivalent after the last deal was signed, and he made quite a lot of points about, well, we're delighted to have ITV, but we'd like them to innovate and move forward and see what other things they can do. I didn't quite know whether this was the sort of thing people say normally, or it was the racing saying, you know, we love ITV, but we'd love you to keep looking forward and keep being innovative, which I'm sure ITV would like to be. I think all in all, you can't really fault this deal, and any other sport, whether you're a big boxing person, whether it was boxing or any of the non-football sports, to get a deal like this is absolutely magnificent.
Yeah, and David, you certainly as a fellow member of the media, you do get a different feel on track when ITV are in town, but I think also as one of the participants, the power of terrestrial TV it can't be understated.
It's completely vital for racing that this is on free-to-air TV on a Saturday afternoon. I mean, it's so important, and if we ever lost it, I think it would be a huge blow to the popularity of the sport.
Well, innovation, of course, is one of the talking points that Cornelius was talking about. RE, that deal, RE, going forward, and Champions Fool Gallop has been sort of part of that storyline for racing, and there's going to be season 2, which was unveiled on the red carpet just the other day. I wasn't there. Don't know if Cornelius was.
No red carpet for me.
No, but nonetheless,
David, you were there. Were you there at the screening of the new series?
I don't get invited to anything.
Oh right. Oh, I thought
I'm barely invited to dinner at my own house.
Sharon, did you watch the first one?
No, I watched the first one, which I thought was excellent, and I heard Lydia actually talking on Nick Luck's daily podcast about she had been to the screening, and she said there were less talking heads, more of the stories, which I think is great. But to have that again on terrestrial television is just another showcase for the sport, isn't it? Yeah. Bringing it to a different audience.
In what is, I think, if it's getting the same time slot, which is a Friday evening. That's pretty good slot to get as well. I think the talking heads thing is really significant, because in the first series, the sort of almost trying too hard by producing all these talking heads of varying degrees of value was actually quite off-putting, and the nitty-gritty of it, Sean Bowen and Harry Cobden, Willie Mullins and Dan Skelton and Paul Nicholls, all that sort of stuff was terrific. But when up popped a talking head to sort of push it in a direction that was quite off-putting. I think everyone, my experience of people of the first series is they enjoyed the start, and then they didn't quite get the trip all the way through the 6 episodes. Yeah, and Lydia, who would be, I would think, she'd be a fair but tough reviewer, seemed to think that it had definitely taken a step forward and a step up, which is good. Though it was only 1 episode they were shown at this.
Yeah, I'm sure lessons have been learned, maybe.
And also confidence either side. So suddenly a camera appears, and in the first series, your jockey or trainer or whoever the person was might have thought, oh my goodness, what happens now? But now they know what happens, and they know the upshot's something that is worthwhile.
Yeah, and obviously the trainer's title race was a big story. I thought the whole prize money, constant checking on that was slightly misleading to your average Joe in the street. But anyway, we'll see how that unfolds. Betting tax as a storyline, maybe just slightly gone off the boil or off the simmer. What's the latest on that?
I think the striking thing about it is that there seems to be well, of course, there's constant talk about betting tax and how it's going to affect racing. Budget's not till the 26th of November, So what are we today? It's the 5th of October today, isn't it? So that's an awfully long time for the whole thing to be considered, and sort of various people are going to get their money's worth. I was quite struck. Fiona Twycross, Baroness Twycross, who is the gambling minister, she talked well on the whole subject this week and kept talking about jobs and black market. I think the jobs thing is really crucial. And then Lisa Nandy, who's in the cabinet, is she the culture secretary? She is the MP for Wigan, where the Toad had his headquarters, and she talked about jobs. And that is the thing. If suddenly they start producing a tax which racing starts saying is costing us an awful fortune, the bookmakers start bleating, the jobs start going, then that's what they're really concerned about. So they've got to make a balance of taxing and maybe using some of that tax to help people in bad ways, as Gordon Brown has suggested, particularly children. And they've got to come up with this balance. And although we're talking about it 2 months ahead, it is still 2 months to go.
And surprisingly, David, it's not caught on with the kind of racing industry as a whole in the same way that affordability checks did, which is a surprise, really, because this affects more people and theoretically should be a bigger story.
It absolutely should, and the threat to racing from this, I don't think, can be underestimated, because we're putting on an absolute premium product, and we have to be paid for a premium product globally. This is probably one of the fairest, best markets for betting in the world. And if we're not paid for it and that revenue starts slipping offshore into untaxed revenues, it's a disaster for racing, so we need to look at it.
In your various strands, is this a story that's hitting home enough?
I don't think it is, not within racing itself. I echo what David says, and I think the ramifications are actually quite terrifying. I think the problem is that it is actually quite a complex subject, and maybe we just need to distill it down a bit for a different audience, so that you can get the wealth of support behind.
Yeah, and I think ultimately as well, it comes down to political clout and political connections, doesn't it? And understanding.
Lord Allen is the crucial figure here.
I don't think there's enough politicians understand the nub of the story or the strands of the story.
And I think there are probably not enough people within racing who are absolutely clear about what the effects could be. And because the tax isn't on racing itself, is it? It's the effects of the tax on bookmakers and what that effect would be on racing. I think that's something that just needs to, minds really need to be concentrated. But the budget's not till the 26th of November, so there is still time to concentrate minds.
Let's do it. Let's do it, people. Let's talk about Jim Bolger, who's scaling down his operation. Redmond's Town Stud is up for sale for just under €1 million. That's part of it. It's not Jim Bolger walking away from racing, which might be the big headline, but it's certainly a step towards it, Cornelius. And
it's not sort of walking away, is it? It's just cutting back. But he has been such a pivotal figure for so many people for so long, and it's not because he's gone skint or anything like that. It's because he's a certain age now, and he's been around a long time. He's been a marvellous story, starting off in business and then getting into racing and then building this great empire, which has been such a big part of flat racing for so long, and such a charismatic figure involved as well. But he's accepting that that things need to change, and he needs to. I think he said he'd always thought about concentrating everything on one farm towards the end of his career. Jim Bolger ain't going anywhere, but things are changing, and were he to go anywhere, that would be racing would be the worse for it.
Historic stud up for sale, but Rathvilly Farm, which he's purchased in recent years, that is where he's going to concentrate a smaller operation that will still include some breeding and some training. But there's going to be some yearlings up for sale, David, and part of our history on both sides of the Irish Sea, and he's very much part of the fabric of it.
Oh my goodness! I mean, what a legend that man is, and what a training ground he's been. Aidan O'Brien came out of there, AP McCoy. I remember when, and this shows how old I am, when Aidan set up training jumpers in Ireland. Virtually, by the way, he's so good at it, he decimated the entire, the rest of Irish jump racing because he won everything. But I remember when he was setting up, the word was he was Jim Bolger's assistant, and Jim Bolger said he'd do anything short of marrying him to keep him. And he was leaving because he was getting married. But you knew he must be a very, very good, or potentially a very, very good trainer, which of course he is.
Yeah,
and a marvellous character as well. We're just, you know, there are still some interesting and diverse and colourful characters around, but they don't make them quite like Jim Bolger anymore.
No, and singular in his own ideas and his own pursuits. And I suspect probably for your son Fred, something of an icon in that kind of breeding part of the world. Yeah,
he's almost, you know, it's like that kind of legend status, like Sir Mark. But didn't he once tell Sir Tony McCoy that he'd never make it as a jockey?
Well, he was like, AP, did he fall off a horse and break something, and he was lying in the snow, and he came over to him and he was in agony there, and he gave him a prod with his foot and called him a soft so-and-so.
McCoy softy.
Story along those lines, anyway.
Even Bulger could get it wrong on one occasion. Let's talk about Jockey Club profits. Well, probably slightly under the radar. There's so much doom and gloom, isn't there? But
I'm not
actually
sure
green shoots?
Yeah, it's possibly not 2 minutes worth here, but the Jockey Club figures came out this year. The profit for last year, this week, and the profit for last year, 19.2 million. That was up more than 6.5 million. So that was good. And because quite a lot of the Jockey Club talk has not been especially positive, because the talk has surrounded attendances and costs, particularly at Cheltenham and at Epsom. But hospitality's been good, sponsorship's been good, media income's been good. There's also this slightly dreaded 2 words, cost management as well, which presumably means there have been 1 or 2 cuts along the way as well. But things are looking up, and there have been quite a lot of not particularly brilliant Jockey Club stories, particularly relating to Cheltenham and Epsom, but here is something that, you know, they're on the front foot about. Yeah,
and David will be back at Cheltenham in a couple of weeks' time for their opening showcase meeting with the 17-horse David Maxwell dispersal sale.
Are you a member of the Jockey Club?
I am indeed.
Yeah, yes. Right. So do you feel more on the front? But you know, hearing those profits, that's good.
It's a healthy Jockey Club, healthy racing, I think. But the big news is price of Guinness is down at Cheltenham.
Down 30 pence.
Yeah, down 30 pence. This is great news.
Amen.
Well,
amen.
actually, for viewers in Ireland, there's a particular thing they have, and this I thought slightly went under the radar. They're doing, because Willie Mullins in particular has said, you know, going to Cheltenham now with hotels and costs of travel, etc., is really expensive, and they're doing a deal at Cheltenham, £299 as an Irish deal over the 4 days, which was compared to £417, I think, if it was a British punter. So they've taken on board what Willie Mullins and others have said, that the costs of getting over really can be prohibitive. And I think the Irish presence it remains noisy, doesn't it? But it has felt a little bit down over the last couple of years. But there's a real attempt to push it back up again. No question about it. And the spectre of Kempton closing, will it, won't it, raising its head again in recent weeks. Il Est Francais coming to the UK. Of course, Noel George has been sort of part trainer, now coming across to his dad. The Kelvin Hughes are going to own the horse outright. A horse whose pedigree, David, is closely linked to you.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's a half-brother to a horse that I used to race called Chef de Keep. And when I watch Il Est Francais jumping, he very much reminds me of Chef de Keep. But I do look at him jumping and think, I could not ride that horse. You have to draw.
Did you ever get the chance?
No.
Did you ever get a chance to buy it?
Oh, well, yeah, the first time I ever went to Noel George's, he showed it to me and he said, oh, this horse is very nice. We think he's quite special. He's a half-brother to one of yours. I said, oh, is he for sale? He said, oh, no, he's just been sold. And I rue the fact that if I'd maybe gone 3 weeks before, he might have said, he's for sale. He's a half-brother to one of yours. You might buy him, actually. But I think, actually, there was only a half share ever for sale. And I don't suppose the breeder who owned that half share would have been massively keen on jockeying up David Maxwell.
He's an exciting horse, though, Sharon, isn't he? I mean, obviously, his attacking run style and maybe his physiological makeup is always going to be forefront of punters' minds, I think. Maybe it's always going to be a handicap for him. But my goodness me, when he's on it, he is on it.
He is unbelievable, and I think jump racing needs those headline acts. I mean, who can, you know, you can't forget what he did in the King George last year. I mean, everybody thought he had it in the bag, but, you know, sadly not. But again, at the back of your mind, there's always that, you know, he isn't. He has a slightly weak constitution. There is an issue there, but it's amazing that he's staying in training. It would be great to see him over here, and hopefully, you know, he'll be healthy, you know, throughout the season.
That changed the way he's campaigned, do you think?
Well, I'm just trying. He's only ever run 3 times in Britain. He won the Quarto Star, second in the King George, and he ran in the Ryanair, I think, didn't he, at Cheltenham? I think I'm right about that. Well, presumably we'll see him a little bit more often, which is good. He, as you say, his constitution isn't necessarily the strongest, but perhaps the Cotswold air, being trained by Dad Tom close to Stroud, right in the heart of the Cotswolds, might be a beneficial. We know that change of scenery can be an advantage. So, yeah, it's a positive in terms of British jump racing, isn't it?
Lovely part of the world. Lovely part of the world. Rossa Ryan flying highs, 1,000th winner in the last week. 200 winners a season, it seems, pretty regularly, although some way, like several others, adrift of Oisin Murphy in the jockey's title race. Quite a milestone in a relatively short space of time.
Well, I think it's the speed that he's achieved this that is so striking. I was looking this up. So he rode his first winner right at the end of 2016 at Dundalk. He was over with Richard Hannon in 2017. And in this very studio, about this time of the year 5 years ago, I remember coming in here and he was sitting there talking to Nick about the fact he was about to have his first ride at the Breeders' Cup. And I remember thinking, gosh, he's only about 19 or 20 and he's off to the Breeders' Cup to ride a horse called Devawala, which finished down the field in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. So it's the speed with which, you know, clearly he went to that very good Hannon nursery. Things took off. He was at the Breeders' Cup in 2020, and then over the last couple of years, particularly this weekend last year with Blue Stocking, but also Shackhill as well, winning the July Cup, things have really taken off. The one slightly surprising thing, there was a media release I saw said he has reached the remarkable total of 1,000 winners. Well, it's not really that remarkable that he's got there. I think it's just the speed with which he's got there, and he's clearly dining at the top table. There were some quotes this week from Oisin Murphy, who started saying, well, it's great to be champion jockey again, but then he said, but look at who's coming along behind me. There's Billy, there's Rossa, and then, of course, he practically ran out of fingers as he had to say, there's Tom, there's Hector, there's Kieran Fallon, who's had a terrific year as well. So the standard's pretty good at the moment, isn't it?
He seems the heir apparent, and for people like us in and around the business, Sharon, for the media, he's the next generation of good communicators.
Yeah, he is. He's an excellent communicator, and I think it's testament to his absolute hard work, because I know what their schedule is like. That he's managed to achieve this, but things have really taken off for him since he rode that Group 1 win on Shaquille in the July Cup.
Yeah, I think he's got a good team behind him as well. Now, the Racing Foundation conference. This might not be on people's tongues.
This got me cross. The Racing Foundation had what I'm sure was an excellent conference this week, which amongst the speakers was Rob Calder, Chief Growth Officer for Prem Rugby, no longer Premiership Rugby, it's Prem Rugby, and a guy called Stuart Rowson, who I used to work with at the BBC, hated racing. And Rob Calder said, I feel racing is a closed shop. I don't know the language. I'd feel nervous where to stand. Don't let the sport get caught in its own complexities. Now, I think that was really the case of a few years ago. But I just felt that was a bit bad luck on a lot of people involved in racing who have worked exceptionally hard to try and make racing more accessible than perhaps it used to be. And, you know, I don't know Rob Calder from a row of beans, and I'm sure he's a very good man, but it struck me as he was possibly grabbing hold of a caricature of racing being a little bit out of touch. And this guy called Stuart Rowson, who said he'd struggle to name 3 jockeys, well, he was actually the person at the BBC who relegated racing from the front page of the website to an also ran in terms of the website. So I just got a little bit cross because I felt this was unfair on racing in 2025 and very unfair on those people who've worked quite hard to make it more accessible.
OK. Is there
not to say there isn't more work to be done.
Yes. At the heart of that, David, is there a point that, you know, racing's on the day racing experience, it is kind of rooted, the sections of the racetrack, whichever section you go into, is kind of rooted in British elitism, isn't it, essentially? Is there a case in point that needs to be broken down? Or is it simply a case of how you want to attack the day, how you want to dress up. There should be a place for all parties to be catered for.
Actually, I think a lot of this has already been addressed, and those comments, I think, maybe are racing 10 years ago. They're not racing today, actually. And if you look at what the Jockey Club did a few years ago with dress codes, for example, that worked really well. And, you know, people don't go, they could go to Kempton or Sandown dressed in their pyjamas if they want to, but you know what? They don't. They dress up, actually, and they like doing it. But that was one of the barriers that was broken down, and it's worked brilliantly.
And I think there are plenty of other sports as well that aren't immediately comprehensive to everybody if they're not particular fans of it. And no one ever says, God, golf should modernise itself. What's all this about albatrosses and eagles and all this kind of... No one ever says that about golf, but racing always seems to be an easy target.
Well done. Those were this week's
You can tell I got a big
points.
cross.
Well done.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.